shortly, but thank you so much for joining us today and for being here. We're so glad you could all make it this evening. I know it's a Friday evening, so thank you so much for being with us on this Friday night. For those who might not be aware, Nathalie and I, along with the rest of our team, who you can't see, but they're working hard behind the scenes, we're the House of 21. We're a group of George Brown fashion management students. We've been working on planning a virtual event for one of our final courses in the program. We were tasked to find a local small business and create an event around them from the ground up. And together we came up with Rethink Rework Rewear, which we are really happy to share with you finally this evening. In the planning stages, our team really wanted to focus our event around sustainability in fashion however we could. As fashion students, we want to educate ourselves as much as we can about how we can better the industry after we graduate. So it was kind of only natural that our event moved in this direction. And planning the event, we originally reached out to Maegan from Shoppe and Tailor, and then we reached out to Lilit after Maegan had introduced us to her, and then we reached out to Annie because we thought these three together would just be kind of a perfect fit to round out our panel and for what we want to talk about today. So in the next hour, we're going to get into discussions about slow fashion, upcycling, tailoring, waste reduction, and so many more awesome topics. But I just want to give a few reminders before we begin. As audience members, you are not able to turn on your cameras or microphones, so don't worry about having to mute yourself or anything. But you are more than welcome to engage in the chat box or raise your hand. I would just ask that you save any questions you might have until the end, because we're going to do a Q&A session at the end with the panelists. And I also just want to let everyone know that the panel is being recorded, and we're going to upload it to YouTube at a later date, hopefully sometime next week. So for anyone who was unable to make it right now or who wants to access it later, it will be recorded. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Nathalie, who's going to briefly introduce our panelists.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so we have three panelists, as you can see today. First, Maegan McWade from Shoppe and Tailor. She is also, or was, a fashion student and is now an expert tailor, particularly in custom dresses and vintage pieces. Lilit Azaryan, who has I guess, similar educational background in fashion, has had a career in design and is also currently doing vintage tailoring and custom made pieces. And finally, Annie Wells, who is the owner and founder of Simply Suzette, which is a sustainable denim company. And they will tell you more about who they are and what they do.
And also in the chat.
Do you want to start?
Take a look. Their links are in the chat if you want to check them out. But we'll start with Maegan.
I hold my microphone nice and close to my face. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I am a tailor. I've had a shop. My shop is at college in Ossington. It's called Shoppe and Tailor. It was birthed basically out of necessity for repairs and alterations. I just kind of kept following where people were bringing in their busted up clothes. And then over the years, I really saw this like huge draw to vintage repairs. I'm a big vintage advocate. I solely purchase and buy vintage. And then, yeah, and so you can kind of basically do and remake and restyle any existing clothing into whatever you want. So it was kind of like a good way of inexpensively starting with like the bare bones of a garment and then like reinventing it into something that's more modern and current without having to buy new fabric, understand pattern drafting, or understand garment construction to kind of get what you want. And yeah, so Shoppe and Tailor was kind of like a thing that came from bringing people what they wanted and needed and following the money. And it really like spoke to my core values around sustainability, environmentalism, and also my passion for fashion and the fashion industry, which is like known for being a very non-sustainable industry. Yeah, so it's a good bridge.
Great, thank you. Lilit?
Hi, so I'm Lilit. I'm a owner and the founder of Threadfoot Tailors and Brush Bridal tailoring studio located here in Toronto. I opened up 7 years ago with like one simple idea behind to help to prolong your favorite piece of garment by altering, remodeling, or even recreating it. Much more on my way. Yeah, coming from a textile background helped me a lot, just because I can kind of, I don't know, I learned to see beyond the silhouette and the shape of a garment. And I could just look inside of the like structure and texture of the textiles, and then trying to like manipulate and then combine sometimes uncombinable. So yeah, I'm a self-taught sewer, and meaning that I don't remember like a time in my life and I wasn't trying to push the boundaries. So it was always like a huge learning process for me. And this is probably one of the maybe strongest assets that I have. I was born in Armenia, and when I was a teenager, I was already like an experienced sewer in a way, because my grandma and my mom would always like support me in my learning process, and I would ruin their clothes basically. But that also taught me like I could use them in future for something else. So like the sustainable approach, in my opinion, like I don't know, I always try to compare it with like reproduction in biology. What is it? It's like basically the offspring carries the DNA of a parent. For me, it's like taking a piece that already has a character in it, like taking the core. And if you want to, I don't know, reinvent into something new, like introduce something new and fresh, and then you have a new product in your hands. And that product still carries the DNA, you know, it's still very close to you. So that idea behind, I think it kind of sits in me, and then that's what drives me. And then I think the business that I'm in right now. Overall, I think the sustainability is such a broad thing. It's really hard to understand where exactly you can, you know, come in and help out. But after so many years, I realized like even if we do something really tiny and small on our hands, this world's just going to be such a better place to live in for all of us, you know. So yeah, this is me.
Thank you. Annie?
Yeah, so thank you for the beautiful introduction. And I am the founder and director of Simply Suzette. So I started Simply Suzette about actually almost 3 years ago now. It's crazy how fast time flies. But it is basically an online platform that aims to bridge the gap between the denim industry and consumer through education and what has become a phrase now, sustainable storytelling. So with it, my mission is really to help consumers understand the value that goes into designing denim, the value of the materials that go into making a jean, the innovation that goes behind it, and why consumers should care about all of this. And so part of this mission was to inspire, educate, and create a community that surrounds the topic of sustainability. And I've really done this through it's something called the Diligent Denim blog, which is an extension of my website now, because I really believe that storytelling plays such a crucial role in raising awareness and educating us and asking difficult questions and really motivating us to actually do better and be better. And so after I've launched the Diligent Denim blog, I actually just launched Supply Chain 101 about a couple of months ago, which aims to help upcoming fashion professionals, startup brands, fashion students like yourselves at George Brown, to understand really all the steps that are involved within the supply chain. Because really, I even went to a fashion management program, and my version of the supply chain was wholesale retail consumer. I really had no idea that this whole world existed behind our clothes. And I found it a shame that the people behind our clothes are working so hard at making sustainable innovations and really trying to move this industry towards a more sustainable one. And I assumed that if I found this information fascinating, a fashion student who used to be a fashion, like I used to be a shopaholic, like no questions asked, like for sure. So if I found this information industry interesting, I thought that others would also find it interesting and also start to appreciate the value that goes into making clothes, because it is such a it's such a skill, and people need to realize that. And people like Maegan and Lilit, who do amazing things like tailoring, obviously know how hard that is and what skill it takes. And yeah, really the ethos and philosophy behind Simply Suzette is reconnecting consumers with their clothes, because I feel like if we are connected with the people that make our clothes too and the processes behind it, people are more willing to pay for the true value of clothes. So that's a little bit about Simply Suzette. It's also kind of turned into a consultation, research, and writing kind of service platform as well for brands that are looking to use their, brands that are looking to use their business for good. And yeah, it's a bit about me. Previously, I was a student at Humber at a fashion management program, and I did a communications undergrad at Laurier. And yeah, I actually did a postgraduate certificate for buying at George Brown as well. So I'm kind of a George Brown alum a little bit in some sense. So yeah, so that's me.
Great.
Amazing. So much.
So getting back to the topic about vintage, and obviously vintage is becoming very popular these days, or increasingly popular. Lilit and Maegan, because you I guess maybe had started your business or had a lot of focus on refashioning vintage pieces, can you tell us a little bit about the process that goes into it, from consulting with your client to materials and all that?
I'm happy to start. In terms of vintage, I approach it sort of like equally to any garment. So I think like first and foremost is like textile and comfort, and then fit. So does it fit you? What about it do you like? If someone's bringing in like a vintage piece for just like a massive rehaul, basically break it down by like the key elements that spoke to them. So is it like the color? Is it like the text? Is there the buttons on it that you love? Or is it the length? Or what is it about it that you love the most? And then work backwards from there. I think with vintage, like anything is possible. You can turn a dress into a pantsuit. I've done like full-on men's suits into women's suits. I've turned pants into dresses into pants, like you name it. So long as you have enough fabric to work with, you can pretty much do anything. That being said, there are limitations. So when working with clients, I basically ask like, what do you love and how much money do you want to spend? Because that's a real and important question. The work doesn't come cheap. It's basically, I charge by the hour. So the more work that someone wants done to a particular garment, the more money it's going to cost. And then like the last element that I really like to speak to my clients about is their like sentimental attachment to it. So because it's like a financial choice to sometimes rework an entire existing piece, how much do they want to put into it, and how much are they going to love it in the end? Because like vintage is intended and has been loved at least like one to a few times in advance of it becoming in your own hands when you acquire it. And so like, how do you think about it in full circle? Like how long do you want to love this piece, and how much money do you want to invest into creating it into this like a special item in your wardrobe? And so that's kind of like the step that I go with. And if they're like, yes, take my money, then kind of we go ham and make it beautiful. And the bottom line is that the fit has to be excellent, because if something doesn't fit you, it could be so beautiful, but if it doesn't fit you, it doesn't look good. I think Lily can probably attest to that too. But yeah, that's kind of my process, like the emotional connection first and foremost to each component of a vintage piece, and then moving forward from there is kind of where you kind of get creative within those limitations.
Lilit, what do you think is the appeal in particular of vintage right now? We're having trouble hearing.
We're gonna. And
You're muted.
yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't heard the question because the connection was lost. I kind
I'm
of
sorry.
picked it
What
up.
what do you think the appeal is now of vintage clothing?
So I really think that, especially after the COVID hit us, many people started to rethink their, I don't know, buying habits in a way. You know, like many people started to see, okay, this is what I have, and maybe I can actually make use of it because I don't know, like I was a shopaholic myself, like Ani mentioned like a few minutes ago, and I know what it is, and I feel like I'm probably going to go back a bit. So when I was a child, I was living in a country where there wasn't really much in the shops. So the only thing we were left with was like whatever we have in our wardrobes, and that's why we basically went into it, and then everything was pretty much handmade. So my mom would do it first for me, then I started to do it. So this was kind of a thing that I really had by the time I grew up and I was a teenager, and I was firstly outside of my country. I remember the first thing I would do, I would literally just go into the shops and try to like buy as many things that I could. You know, this was kind of a hunger that I had and then accumulated during all my years that I lived in my country. But then afterwards, you realize like I do have a piece that is there for like, I don't know, 15 years. And I shop, I buy some stuff. I like it. Like I would wear it like in a second or two. I don't really care about the quality, which is really weird. But and then afterwards, you realize, I don't know, I had this really click in my head, like maybe 6-7 years ago. Then I understood that I think like the quantity does not really bring the quality. So I would really rethink about like the wardrobe that I have, and I would literally like change my perspective to my wardrobe. I basically would have 1 or 2 pieces that I really like because I would just go to a shop and if I see something, I would really trust my gut. I would just get it. And then maybe in 5 years or in 10 years, I'll find something that will match that piece. So that mentality behind, I think helps me to understand when somebody brings in a piece, you know, I don't know, I work a lot with
So I think we lose Lilit?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
now.
Yeah, so coming back to your question, so I went really far. I think as, again, Maegan was mentioning, I think it's all about the emotional connection to it. And once people, especially with brides, because that's mostly what I'm kind of working now with, you know, I think I'm really happy to see like brides, young people coming in with their mom's dresses, you know, like these dresses with huge shoulders and like really polyester filled, but there's some kind of an attachment that they have with it. So for me, the most important is to understand what exactly they want to keep in it, you know, like then I have to kind of dig in. I need to understand who the person is, because for me, it's more important to understand. I need to kind of follow their wishes as well, because I think that's in a way a translation of what they want at the end of the day. It's not only what I like, right? So the second hand and, you know, the vintage piece, I think brings in so much more. It has a character, it has the emotional connection. Again, for the bride, I'm just like focusing on bride just because it's a moment in her life that's supposedly to be there just once in a lifetime. So it's a memory, it's an experience that she has to actually hold with her and then live with it during all her life. So I think this is something really that she can pass on in future. And I really believe that you can actually like keep passing the wedding dress from generation to generation, you know, like keeping a small piece of it. And then it's such a, I don't know, I had a bride, she came in, like we made a completely new dress. And then she just asked me, she brought this blanket of hers that she was like really a small baby. And she asked me to cut a piece of it, just attach it underneath of the dress. You know, no one is going to see it, but it has such a value for her. And I think that's probably what like is the value of the whole idea behind using something old and attaching to something new. I don't know if I've answered your question. Sorry, I've
Yeah,
got
no,
like
that's a great point, and it really makes a lot of sense, especially now.
yeah, and I think especially now with COVID, I really see the shift in, because we communicate a lot with our brides, and like if I look at the numbers that people are actually inquiring about altering their mom's dresses, it's like the number is so much bigger right now. So it's either people have to think of, okay, like I don't want to spend money, what can I do, you know, like the people are kind of pushed to look inside rather than just always go outside, go into this, you know, huge stores and look for it. And I think it's a really good tendency, and I think the sustainable approach, it's really on the way. I don't know, I really believe in this right now.
Great. I think that's a good segue into Annie and you know, what you're doing with the denim in particular.
Yeah, I mean, both. Absolutely, I'm huge fans of Maegan and Lilit's, just because that's exactly how I wish everybody worked. Obviously, using what we have is the best thing we can do. And one thing I wanted to point out too, like you said, Maegan, how fit is so important, or else it won't look nice. I also think, like, if things, you know, there's so many sustainable brands coming out there that are producing new sustainably produced items, but if you're producing something and it might be produced sustainably, but if it's ugly, no one's going to buy it anyways also, so you might as well not make it. So that's another thing too. It has to fit right and it has to look nice in order for it to, you know, be successful. But two, just I always come back to this connection with their clothing, which is exactly what both Maegan and Lilit have just beautifully described, and what I'm really trying to do with Simply Suzette. But I think a big problem that where our waste in the textile industry comes from is fueled by overconsumption and overproduction, and the two are not synonymous with one another. They all have so many factors that push both happening. Like, we have decades of ingrained social pressures that have pushed us to buy and buy and buy and just consume excessively to fill these voids in our lives. And it's like yeah, like Lilit said, it's you have to look within, but that overconsumption from us obviously fuels the demand for brands to produce more, but also it's not all the brand's fault. Factories also have minimum order quantities, which is hard for the brand sometimes to meet, and forces them to produce more than they would have originally, because they're not able to buy just what they need, for example. So there's a lot of different factors playing into overconsumption and overproduction, and it's like, I almost say it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? It's kind of like that type of deal. But in terms of denim per se, and clothing waste in general, it's estimated, this is a stat from 2017, but it's estimated that it's about, there's like, let me get the stat up just to make sure. It's 13 million tons of textile waste each year. That's absolutely insane. So there's about 8 billion jeans produced a year, and like about around 100 billion garments produced a year. And right now, there's only 1% of it that actually gets recycled back into clothing. So there is technology out there that is helping us move towards textile recycling, but it's not yet available for the average brand out there, the average person. It's just not scaled up yet, unfortunately, which is why I'm such an advocate for using what we have. In terms of vintage too, I always promote upcycling vintage denim first. If you're looking to start a brand, you should really start at using what's out there first. What I used to do was actually tailor vintage jeans, and I sold them on Simply Suzette. I don't do that anymore, just I haven't had the ability to source the vintage denim that I've usually sourced in the past just because of COVID. I'm not sure if I will continue to do so, but yeah, just in terms of waste in the industry, there's about, the US Environmental Protection Agency also estimates that textile waste occupies 5% of all landfill space, which is absolutely absurd. There's this organization called The Ore Is Present. I highly recommend everybody looking them up. They do a lot of research within textile waste in Africa. I can't remember the exact area of Africa. I believe it's the Cantonmento landfill that they research mostly in, but they found that basically these clothes that are in landfills have become a part of the earth, like literally have become a part of our earth. And if you wanted to remove them because you think that's a good thing to do, it actually disrupts soils and the earth even more. So the best thing to do is leave them there right now, which seems backwards, but it's like a huge, yeah, it's just our overconsumption. It's a huge problem. And the only thing I see as the solution is to consume less on our end, and also produce less on the brand's end. And we need everybody working together, really. We need the consumers, we need brands, we need the supply chain, and we need governments all really to help us. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar, but in Canada, we have this organization called Fashion Takes Action, which is a really phenomenal organization who's doing a lot of research in textile waste right now. And also at the moment in Canada, textiles aren't even considered a waste resource, or like a waste source. So we don't have concrete data on these numbers either, which makes it more difficult to actually address too. And also, I wanted to speak about traceability and transparency, which is great to see that more and more brands are speaking about it, but we really need true traceability in order to understand where all the waste is coming from, what we can do with the waste at the end, because if we don't know what's in a garment, we don't know how to best use it at the end of its life, after, of course, upcycling and tailoring it to better fit and keep extending the use of it. There's this one stat that I always come back to too. It's if we actually extend active use of a garment, it will reduce its energy consumption, water consumption, and carbon footprint by 20 to 30%, just in its total life cycle span. So that's actually a really telling fact to me, because if people can't use their garment in like 9 months, like it really does mean we're throwing out our clothes at an absurd rate. So I think, again, there's the stat that there's about like a truckload of textiles getting dumped every minute, which is bad as well. But so yeah, there's obviously a lot of excess in the industry, and even with COVID too, when stores were closed, we kind of have a buildup of inventory now as well in the system. So it's finding partners to like Lilit and Maegan to upcycle these products into something that we can use for the future and continue to use and repair them. And in my opinion, that's literally the best thing we can do to curb our waste problem. But yeah, in terms of denim, I guess I'll just speak a little bit about how we're dealing with the waste. There's a lot of water waste that comes out in denim too, just because to get those beautiful vintage looks that we all crave, a lot of water is generally used, but there are things like ozone gas, I know it sounds weird, lasers and enzymes that actually replace water in this process. But also there's still water used at every single step, and it becomes polluted after going through these processes. So a lot of the times now, the good factories will actually have water recycling plants on site, as well as fiber recycling plants on site as well. So any of the offcuts that are collected off the ground, from spinning to cut and sew, are also collected and recycled there. So factories are trying to implement their own recycling facilities for themselves, rather than relying on the current infrastructure for textile recycling, which is, like we mentioned, virtually non-existent at the moment. So yeah, there's really cool things happening. There's amazing companies called like Renew Cell is one of them, Worn Again, Infinited Fiber, and those are 3 off the top of my head that are really working towards chemically recycling textiles, which sounds also bad. It does require chemicals, but it does help with the waste. It does help with just getting rid of this excess textile and creating new fibers to be used that are of the same quality, or if not higher, because there's another technique called mechanical recycling. That's where you just shred down the pieces of denim basically, and then recycle that into new fiber, but it breaks down the qualities of the fiber, so it needs to be spun with virgin cotton as well to just get that strength back. But with the chemically recycled textiles, it basically is it's not melted, but it's like almost melted down into like this honey-like substance, and then extruded through, I'm not sure if you guys have learned how polyester is made, but it's basically like pasta almost. It's extruded through and comes out like tubes on the other end, and that creates the fibers. So those are a couple different technologies that are helping with waste. Of course, I still obviously believe that less consumption and less production is the first order of business, so we don't have so much excess. But yeah, I think, yeah.
That's those stats are staggering. I mean, and I think the first thing we need to do is obviously just raise awareness, because I don't think people are aware of just the kind of waste that's involved. I mean, it can be very hard to compete with the fast fashion and, you know, being able to buy an entire outfit online for just a few dollars. But you know, just being aware of how things are made and the waste, and thinking about it more, I think is really the first step. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing up those points.
Yeah, and I want to jump in and say, just on the topic of fast fashion, I know we kind of throw around the word slow fashion a lot. So, I mean, I kind of wanted to ask you, Annie, or Megan or Lilit as well. Like, what does slow fashion, to somebody who might not be aware, like, what does that entail? Like, what does that mean?
I think it could mean a lot of other things like sustainability, honestly. Obviously, the direct meaning, in my opinion, is just slowing down the rate that things are produced. Right now, there's like 52, like for example, Zara has 52 seasons or 52 like lines or collections coming out, which is one every week basically. So in the past, we used to only have the 4 seasons. It came out fall, winter, spring, summer. But there have been so much, yeah, fast fashion really just tries to pump out as much as they can, as fast as they can. And they don't take the time to honor, I think, the skills that they're, I don't want to say ripping off, but a lot of the times fast fashion brands are ripping off other higher end designs. So yeah, these fast fashion brands basically skip over the whole beautiful process of and time that goes into creating beautiful garments. And yeah, I think one thing I want to mention about slow fashion though is that Bangladesh and countries like Cambodia and them, their whole country virtually relies on the fast fashion industry. I don't necessarily want to see that taken away from them. So I think there really needs to be some work on how to create a balance there. Yeah.
Megan, I know you had a piece that you were working on there that we wanted to see and talk about how you made that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to make a point on slow fashion is like, you could talk about what slow fashion is forever. There's so much that contributes to what slow fashion is. Just like, yeah, even taking time to literally breathe between building collections is like step one even. And then the sense of competitiveness that fast fashion has become, it's like the more companies produce is like they're ahead of the game in terms of sales, so they're dominating the market, so they're just pumping out more and more and more to stay ahead of everybody else, when slow fashion is really more like opening up the world and platform for multiple people to sell kind of like equally. And the slower you make things, the more value they have. And even, you know, I mean, I'm not like an economist by any means, but creating a higher value for like individual garments, countries like Bangladesh and Cambodia could potentially just be paid more for the fewer pieces that they're making. So the value per item increases as the value of an item is perceived. So yeah, it's just like working backwards from the last like 35, 50 years of fashion production. Anyway, so we could go on about that forever and ever. But that to kind of like slow some stuff down, Lilit and I have been working on this. We have this look here, and I'll kind of zoom out so you guys can see it. But basically what we did was we went through like our roster of scrap leftover fabrics, because I pretty much keep like maybe 90% of the stuff that's like cut-offs or ends or bits and leftover bits of everything that ever comes through my shop, and as well as Lilit too. And so we opened up a Slack channel to figure out how we were going to collaborate, and just kind of threw out a bunch of photographs of our scraps, and then pick and chose what we wanted, and just like one by one kept building this look. So I'm just gonna shuffle this over here. Okay, so we have this like jacket, and Lilit made this jacket. It's like a recycled denim. So it's denim, and then I think this was a skirt. This was a skirt, so it's got this like really beautiful cross stitching in it. It's like so textured and so dynamic, such bright colors. And then she bound all the details on the inside. It's so cool. So she made this, and then I needed to like match it with something like a little bit simpler to not like visually compete with this like beautiful, oh, it's just so pretty. And so I'm gonna pop the top off. 1 second, I have to step away from my microphone. All right. So I made a shirt out of some like ends of, I was making masks, red masks earlier this year, some red cotton and some old denim. So I didn't have a lot of fabric. So I did this like cool cutout and strategically placed it. So it's kind of like you can use like less textile if you think creatively on how you're going to pattern it together. And then I've got some like old jeans. This is like the thigh of an old pair of jeans up top here. And then these pants, this is from like an old couch that I had, I guess, reupholstered for someone once. And this is left over from a pair of pants I did for someone maybe like 10 years ago. And then, yeah, just like, I think this was a mask. And then this was another pair of pants I did from someone else. So there really just like wasn't a lot of fabric left over, but the colors, how they worked out to match Lilit's piece is like spot on. And it was really only from like collecting so many scraps and having the excess that we just held on to, because it to us holds value, and we've never let go of this waste because it's not waste to us. We were able to build this look, and it looks like awesome. We're like really pleased. And like the collaboration and like COVID distanced, how we were going to bring these like textiles together while not being near each other at all, was far more successful than I like in my mind. I thought I knew we were in the like nick of time it was gonna work out, but you know it actually did, which was really cool. Even these buttons, these are all like recycled buttons. I go to like a bulk place where I just buy like weighted buttons and then I sort through them. It's just like buttons cut off from XYZ over the years, and I just buy them, I guess, like secondhand, really. Yeah, because anything can be recycled so long as you like think creatively and proactively about what you do with it. And so this is a look. So we were discussing like what our future plans are around this like concept of this design, and we think we're going to keep working through it. We might stick with this design and recreate it in a variety of different colorways and different upcycled textiles, to basically showcase that whatever your look is, you can definitely recycle something that exists already and recreate it into what you want. There's no limitations within that. It just takes forethought, planning, intention, and understanding of what that means.
I think I'm like stunned. It's incredible, those pieces. I mean, to think that you used a piece of a couch, right,
Yeah.
for the pants, that we need more of that kind of creativity. And people with the kind of talent that you all have to come up with these ideas and think about, you can do a shirt, and even if you don't have, enough fabric to do a back, you can just do something super cool, and use what you have. I just think it's so amazing.
I'm just gonna say a few words as well. So, like very shortly about Maegan, I was so happy to kind of meet Maegan, and I don't know. For me, it's very important to kind of see like-minded people and kind of feed from them. It's like such an energy when you get to know new people, and then they also kind of happen to have the same mindset as you have, which is crazy. But yeah, it was like unbelievable. Like, oh my god, I like vintage and stuff. I'm like, oh my god, this is something I like as well, and why don't we do something? And yeah, it somehow worked amazing. And one thing, just something that I actually like recently realized, I remember just going into Value Village like years ago and seeing a bed skirt, like really torn bed skirt, but I really loved the bottom part of it. I don't know, I just got it, obviously, without even knowing where and how I'm going to use it. This is something, I think it's also a skill somehow that I happen to have. And then you just buy these things without even thinking, and then you kind of store it in your head, and then years later you pass by another fabric, and then suddenly you understand, oh my god, these two fabrics, they click amazingly. So I feel like this is so when Maegan explains how she actually keeps everything, oh my god, this is such a horrible thing, because you can imagine how much work it comes in here, and then how much we actually have to like give away at the end of the day. And it's really hard because I'm a keeper, like I literally keep everything, like literally. Sometimes like I had people asking me to keep threads as well, so I would just like collect everything from the floor. So that she was like, just give it to me. And it was so nice because somebody can actually do something out of it, so she would just connect to us and then asks us if she can actually use those threads. So it's like, for me, there's endless opportunities with all those scraps and threads and everything. So, and yeah, it's amazing when you can think of, a pillowcase being used for a pen. Who would have think, I would go to Home Depot to find some small little details, because I'm thinking I'm going to use that like for my wedding dress, who would have thought? But again, I think just keep your mind open, and then you just see things everywhere. It shouldn't be just into textile stores, or I don't know, like scraps from leather pieces. I don't know, like we have tons of stuff as well, and you could connect all those little things. And I'm super excited actually right now, like this energy, just I can't keep it up, to be honest. But anyways, like I'm super excited for the work that we might be doing together with Maegan, and there's so much to come. And again, we don't have to stick to one particular fabric. You can just go, like I have so many, like I have scraps from luxury wedding dresses. Like when I think of what can we do with that, that like completely blows my mind. So yeah, I think it's super exciting, and I'm super happy that I actually got to meet Maegan. And thank you guys so much to involve me like personally in this discussion.
Of course, we're so happy to have you, and thank you so much for sharing that piece. It's beautiful. I feel like a lot of the times when we think of vintage, it doesn't have like an appeal to everybody, because maybe they think of like somebody's old sweater that's like not cute anymore. But like now that you're showing us what you can do with it and all these scraps that you put together, I think that's such an amazing thing. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's such a fashionable piece, and you wouldn't like usually associate that with vintage. So thanks so much for sharing that with us.
And like, can I just add one more thing? I
Yeah,
was just talking to Maegan about it actually. For me, like the main key, like which is really important, I really feel like when you do work with vintage, you have to be really aware of the final piece not to be looking like still a second-hand piece. It has to have a really fresh finishing. It has to look clean and non-crafty. This is something in my head that I really have to look at it. And you could, like, if you didn't know what it is coming from, you would see this in a like very high-end store just hanging there, just because the way it's been finished and all the quality that went into it. So the quality is super important, like for me personally, you know. So that's why like people have to kind of understand that there's also like vintage does not always mean that it's dirty, it's old, it's worn, it's messy, you know. Like I think this is kind of the things that we as designers also have to work on, and then show people that it's not a necessity, it's actually can be done in a completely different way. And you know, so yeah.
If I can add something too, is there time, Allie? Or
Yeah, no, there's time. Go for it. Go for it.
Just one thing I get comments a lot too as brands try to implement their own take back schemes and upcycling schemes. Consumers often comment that, why would I sell my used garment for $5 for the company to then mark it up and sell again? But if you can see here the skill and the time that it takes to really piece those things together and creative thinking to understand how the garment can look afterwards, it takes an immense amount of skill and time. And that is why the cost is there. And they do mark up the product after, because time and skill has gone into it. But yeah, I just wanted to add that on top of that, and I'm a big fan of what they're doing. So it's just, yeah, important to see the skill that really goes into it.
I'm also a big fan of Simply Suzette. I've been for a long, long time.
Oh, really? No way.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, I think I've been following you for years. And
No way.
anyway, I think what you're doing is so, so good. And like your whole point on storytelling, absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. And yeah, people don't know otherwise, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
If
I'm
anyone
flattered.
has any questions that they want to pop in the chat, now would be the time, because we're kind of coming up to 6 o'clock here. I don't want to keep everyone, but if anyone has any questions for any of the panelists, please.
I see somebody just posted a question, maybe to Annie and the others. What do you see for denim trends for the next couple of years?
Ooh. Definitely more transparency in terms of fashion or sustainability. I think in fashion, for fashion, I see a move towards just continued comfort, wider legs, as we're all getting used to being in our loungewear. I think that trend is just going to continue on, and with more oversized garments, but also now I'm not a huge fan of this trend, but a lot of stretch is starting to come forward from the factories because they're trying to accommodate for this comfort trend. Stretch, in my opinion, is not the most sustainable thing to do. So I aim for 100% natural fibers, but those are definitely trends that are on the rise in the next couple of years in terms of fashion. Sustainability, traceability is the next big thing, and circularity. But like we said, textile to textile recycling isn't like that large. It's not that much of a solution for everybody in the planet right now. So we'll really have to see what brands or how brands approach circularity in terms of, because everyone has their own approach at the moment. And yeah, so I think traceability and circularity are the next trends in terms of sustainability. And regenerative agriculture. Sorry, that's a big one.
And they also had a follow-up question, and this, I think this is a good question. What exactly is deemed vintage? As far as the time frame, the style, the material, I guess it might be kind of vague, right?
That's a good question. I feel like maybe it's up to you, really. You can say whatever you want. I think it comes down to like how you want to call it. But I think what you see popping up in stores, like how garments like kind of make their way back to like the repicking place. I feel like it's like 10 years, like, and like whatever is sort of becoming like really popular, I guess, in the media again. I see a lot of like early 2000s stuff coming up again. So I think people are probably picking for that. And earlier. Um, I guess that like fine line between like what is secondhand versus vintage. It could be determined by like a block of time where like styles have evolved away from something, and then so that that style can then kind of come back into like something like a new viewpoint or something like that. I think like 10 years, 10, 15 years. You can argue me. I'm happy to hear someone else's opinion too.
I don't have a solid answer on that, but somewhere I read one time, because I had this question too, was 20 years, but then I asked one of my vintage dealer friends and they were like, that's not vintage. And I was like, what? And I was like, so I don't know. I think there's a lot of different opinions out there. I don't have my own opinion on it, to be honest. So
yeah, I've read also different things, like even from 50 years and older. So, I mean, I'm not really a huge believer in trends, to be honest, myself. So I'm kind of trying to go against that. So I feel like the cycles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and then eventually everyone would do whatever they want to. I think if you have an identity, that's probably what you're going to go for. But yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Here's a question for Maegan, and I'm sure Lilit can answer this as well. What would be the essential sewing tools you would need to start kind of transforming your old clothes if somebody wanted to start doing it themselves?
Definitely a needle and thread is a good start. If you have a sewing machine, or if you can acquire a sewing machine, you don't need anything like really expensive. You could get an old hand-me-down sewing machine. Even looking up YouTube on how to use it, you can accomplish a lot of changes stitching by hand. It's just more time consuming doing things by hand, so that like a sewing machine just makes it faster. And you the same way you like fast fashion, like you think it up and you want to wear it now. So doing it with a machine aids in that speed. But having like buttons on hand, safety pins, even I swear I started manipulating my own wardrobe as a kid with like infinite safety pins. I think that's like, the teenage punk rockers MO, in making their own like anti-fashion, safety pins. And like there's so much stuff you can even do with like rubber bands. I used to use like binder clips on my clothes. That was a very weird and crafty. Staples. I mean, I don't like recommend washing anything after you stapled it, but like it does the job in a pinch. But yeah, I think like start there and then let those things inspire you to continue. And it's really like the desire to do it is your the desire to do it, and the dream to do it is your first toolkit. Yeah, without the desire to do it, you can't get it done. It really takes the initiative. Shoelaces, yeah, shoelaces are good. Yeah, like anything, just try it, and it might work on one thing and it might not work on another, but I think just like being creative, you can't go wrong. And also the willingness to make mistakes. Make a lot of mistakes. It's the only way you're going to learn anything in life, really. But yeah.
I would love to add, I think whatever is on the body, basically in a 3D dimension. I'm not a huge fan of like doing everything on the table, because once you put it on, you kind of see more angles and it gives you more ideas. And yeah, Maegan was saying at the end, I completely forgot, but yeah, scissors, obviously, all this stuff for sure. And it just slipped my mind. I'm so sorry. I just forgot. There was one thing I thought I was going to say, and it's gone. Never mind. I just feel like you have to try it on. That's like something I would add from myself.
Right. I think we have time just for one more question. Do you think reworking fashion gets the attention it deserves based on the impact it has on the environment? Annie?
Yeah, no, I don't think it gets the attention it deserves. I think it's starting to, as more people do seek out more special and unique things too. We're going through like a period of really basics and minimal styling as a trend right now, but we are starting to see people appreciate the craft communities more. And I do think it's coming, but at the moment, I definitely don't think reworked fashion gets the credit that it deserves, especially I think we mentioned it before too, because a lot of the times people have this crafty image or like connotation with upcycled and reworked fashion. So it's just trying to curb that mentality. Also, when I used to do pop-ups like selling thrifted and vintage denim and stuff, I used to have customers come and be like, oh, this is secondhand. We're not buying this. So it's just kind of a mental shift that needs to happen in terms of using used things and yeah, just keeping the conversation going around it and showing people how beautiful these pieces can be.
I think I want to add just a little bit onto that too. Even just like I think reworking styles is like the second wave of like the popularity of vintage stores popping up. I think that the advent of Instagram sales and Facebook Marketplace becoming this like alternative to brick and mortar traditional sales. I mean, pop-ups are great, but people can just like buy stuff online, and like the vintage scene is like booming digitally. And then for for me, I find that, and probably Lilit as well, is that like I've often approached vintage retailers in my like, sales tactic of doing tailoring and alterations is like, listen, like when you're selling your pieces, if it doesn't fit them right, you just tell them they can tailor it or alter it. And it's that like second wave to selling a piece in a vintage store. And so I've, partnered with a variety of different vintage shops and online retailers, just with like the conversation about tailoring as just part of the sale, and part of the inspiration process. And then, so it's really just like directly coming from the people selling it. But like the internet and like, I mean, COVID, everyone's becoming like really popular online quickly and like reaching a lot of followers and uh, sort of like online presence, just like having this opportunity to reach so many people. There's a huge platform to talk about it. So I think that there's like a big up and up, and a lot of that has to do with this like digital age and transfer of information.
For sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing all that insightful information with us. And thanks to everyone who asked a question. Those were really, really amazing questions, and encouraged such a great discussion. So thank you. I just want to thank our panelists one more time. In the chat, they're up in the chat somewhere. There's the links to their websites and their Instagrams. I think maybe G1, if you want to post that again so people can go check them out, please go check them out. They all have such amazing brands and businesses, and they deserve all the attention. So please, if you can, go and check them out. Yes, there's the links for them. And thank you guys for your wise words and advice. We'll definitely take that with us as we, especially the students who are here, we'll take that with us as we go into the industry and everyone else listening. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to our group members. I know you can only see Nathalie and Valentina's here as well. Valentina set up the whole Zoom. So thanks, Valentina, for setting up the technology. It ran very smoothly. And the rest of our group members too, who are here. Thank you guys so much. We all worked very hard behind the scenes to set this up. So great job to you guys. And Ellen Ingrid, I know she's here as well, our program coordinator.
And also
and
Rosa.
Ingrid. So yeah, I'll stay on for another couple minutes if anyone has any questions for me or Nathalie, but thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, thank you, Maegan and Lilit and Annie so much. And thanks everybody who came to watch and hopefully learn something.
I want to add that there's like a big pocket in the sustainable market ready for new businesses to come into play, like textile recyclers, even vintage pickers, new designers. Slow fashion is like hot and desired. Becoming a designer is like more accessible than ever before, and even just like the digital platforms, you can do it. You can do it. You can get those things. You can live your dream. So don't be afraid. Do it.
Sure. Thank you so much. But yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And please, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm going to drop my email in the chat now, and feel free. Anyone there, reach out. So thank you. And it was lovely to meet you all, Megan and
Thank you.
Lilit. It was a pleasure to meet you both. And we'll be hopefully chatting soon with you outside of this.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, everybody enjoy your weekend and the nice weather in Toronto.
Thank you. Thank you,
so much.
Allison,
Thanks, everyone.
Natalie, and the team. Thank
Bye.
you.
Coordinating it all. So great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Smooth sailing.
Okay, I was muted.
Oh, wait.
Thank you guys, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining. It was super interesting, super informative for me, and I'm sure for everybody else too. It's just inspiring to hear you guys talk and to learn about, you know, sustainability and learn about what you can do with garments that you already have and that, you know, you're just sitting in the closet. So I really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you
Are we
very
signing
much.
off?
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to let you know, thank you, panelists. We enjoyed the company of 50 people. So thank you very much. This was such an amazing experience.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you, Elsa.
I think we're able to log off now. But yeah, Valentina, just if we log off, I think the meeting might end. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, or I can finish it. Let me finish it.
Valentina, are you able
Okay,
to
bye, everyone.
Bye. Are you able to just remove